I'm watching Marvis on Juniper Networks Mist. Just keep watching, you'll see what I mean. Hey everybody and welcome back. I'm David Townsend from the Net Academy, where we are learning networks together. And on this video, what I'm going to go through is a continuation on Juniper Networks Mist solution, but specifically, what is the Marvis feature? Now, if you don't know what Mist is, please check out this link. I've done a video which describes everything about Mist that you need to know. But Marvis is a really powerful and unique feature that is contained and housed and is supported in the Mist solution. Now, full disclosure, I do work at Juniper Networks. I am a Junivator, but I'm going to make this unbiased as possible. But this video, I'm going to be going through what is Marvis? What is the Marvis Virtual Network Assistant? What are those Marvis Actions? What is the Marvis query language? And more of a newer feature, what is Marvis Minis? And I'm going to do so from an unbiased perspective, like I said, but I'm going to show you and illustrate what all of these Marvis features are, what they do, and then you'll see and understand why I am about to say what I'm about to say, and that is that Marvis is unique, Marvis is extremely powerful, and I'll prove that during this video. If you disagree, please put it down in the comments box, always open for challenges, of course. But for me, Marvis is very exciting that you could just literally sit back and eat a bag of popcorns. I'm a bit of a fan of toffee popcorn, so I went with the toffee. But Marvis is very exciting, and it literally allows those network administrators, those operators for that Wi-Fi, that switching, for that WAN network, and now the data center, to have all this rich AI insight say, this is what's happening on the network and this is what you need to do to resolve that. But I'm not going to say any more. Let's give a quick overview as to what Marvis actually is. So before I show you on the user interface what Marvis is, let's first go through and just bring out my artistic skills, the drawing of a typical enterprise network and the connectivity therein. So right at the beginning, we of course have ourselves, don't we? We are the clients that are connecting to that network. Now, with ourselves, what I'm actually referring to is ourselves with our mobile phones, with our tablets, with our laptops. Maybe it's a wireless scanner of some sort. Maybe it's a till point. Maybe it's a check-in desk at a hotel, etc., etc. Anything that needs that Wi-Fi or maybe Cat5 switching connectivity, that's generally what I'm referring to as a client. And then what there are these access points, these Mist access points for Wi-Fi 4, 5, 6, 6E, no doubt Wi-Fi 7 when that actually comes. And the clients with those phones, tablets, etc., typically they're always connecting to the network over or with the various Wi-Fi standards, the 2.4 gigahertz, the 5 gigahertz, the 6 gigahertz band, etc., etc. It's a huge topic, I know. But the clients ourselves are connecting to that enterprise network, typically, usually, more commonly over Wi-Fi. And then these access points, they have a trunk connection, which will go to a switch of some sort. So I'm just going to put SW in here for the switching element. Now, as I said, the clients, they can have a wired connection straight in to that switch as well. So it does depend on the client, I know. And then as we go through the enterprise network, there is then, at some point, there is going to be a WAN-SD-WAN router which connects to that great big cloud that we are just going to call the internet. Whatever the WAN connection is, multi-protocol label switching, cellular, internet, broadband, doesn't really matter to be honest, but the enterprise is connecting to the cloud over this WAN connection. Now the point here being is that all these clients, all our devices, all the applications that we're actually using on all our terminals and devices, they are typically using, most commonly I would say, some kind of cloud-based application. And as such, all that traffic is going from the clients here all the way across the APs switching and the switching network to the WAN-SD SD-WAN, and then over the internet itself to wherever that, for example, that SaaS-based application actually is. So Microsoft Teams, Outlook, etc., all these tools we use for our day-to-day jobs. Now, what the Juniper Networks Mist solution provides is really this client to cloud visibility. But visibility into what? Well, using the different licenses, so there's wireless assurance, there's wired assurance, there's WAN assurance as well, is that using the Mist AI, the Mist capability via these different wireless, wired and WAN assurance subscriptions is you get the AI insights into those users, those clients which are connecting to that Wi-Fi network or straight into that switching network, and maybe, depending on the application, have some applications which are being pushed and used for the over the WAN-SD-WAN. So the wireless is referring to that Wi-Fi network. Guess what? The wired assurance is referring to that switching network, and guess what? The WAN is referring to that WAN network, respectively. And what Juniper's Mist is, and I'm just going to draw it here, is it's a cloud-based solution which uses, as I've said a few times, artificial intelligence as well as microservices. And I'm not an expert in microservices or AI, but AI is a huge buzzword. But using all of the data which is being sent from the clients and AP switches, WAN routers up to the Mist cloud allows the AI engine to have, via the wireless, wired, WAN licensing, the AI insights into each one of those parts of the network, and thus able to determine what's the overall experience like of the clients that are connecting to this network. But what is this Marvis? Marvis is, of course, a feature on Mist itself, and it's really taken the AI data that's been derived and obtained from the enterprise network, from the clients, through the APs, maybe through the switching, maybe over the WAN, etc., and it's doing a hell of a lot more with it. And to put this into perspective, there is in Marvis the Marvis Actions. Now, I am a big fan of this Marvis Actions because what the Actions does, and I'll show this on the user interface, a picture speaks 1,000 words, but if a enterprise team, a NOC, has, say, 100, 1,000, doesn't matter, issues, problems, errors, events that are happening on the network or will impact the users that are connecting to that network over Wi-Fi, switching, doesn't matter, then Marvis Actions is literally defining, using AI, if you have these 1,000 issues, just for example, these 1,000 events that impact end user experience, well, if you take these 10 actions, then that's going to resolve all of those end user impacting events, whatever those impacting events may be. And just for example, that could be DHCP, or it could be ARP, or it could be DNS, or it could be layer 1 issues, or maybe even layer 2 issues. And recently, as I said, there's also been data center integration as well. So this is very, very powerful. And I don't want to take my own thunder too soon, but if you look at it from an engineering perspective, as I used to be, how long does it take to go to a particular site, assuming it's a remote site, and plug in a tester, as I used to do, to test that layer 2 switch, and only to discover it was a layer 1 cabling issue? Just think about the downtime that that's actually had. What if it's actually a DHCP issue? Is that engineer actually going to be smart enough, trained enough, qualified enough to do a packet capture and to look for that DHCP sequence? Or is it just DNS issue, something that's, can go hidden in most test tools and network monitoring tools, etc.? But regardless of what the issue event may be, the Marvis Actions is taking all of the insights that have been extrapolated and sent from that enterprise network to the Mist cloud and able to define to that NOC's team that these are impacting end user experiences. This is impacting their connections, their quality of experience to your network. And if you take these actions, that's going to significantly improve their overall experience, their overall connectivity. And guess what? That's going to be a benefit to that enterprise, because who likes a dissatisfied customer at the end of the day? It's all about generating business. And of course, good business means the best network uptime as possible. So there is this Marvis Actions. What there also is the Marvis VNA. What this stands for, and I'm just going to write it out, is the Virtual Network Assistant. It took up the whole display there, but Marvis VNA for short. Now, we've all seen this. The concept of a pop-up, a chat box, isn't unique, of course. But what the VNA is doing, using large language modules and deep learning and machine learning, so there's a lot that goes into VNA, is you're able to ask this AI, this Marvis, how is a particular client? How is your switching network? How is your AP? How is a particular application running? What has been the top issues, the top problems facing a particular site, etc., etc. And the Marvis VNA will take your question and it will go away and sift through all the telemetry and insights that's been sent and learned, etc., and push that question and derive the AI insights, and then come back with, in a matter of seconds max, if that, all right, this is what's impacting this user. This is what's impacting this AP. This is what this switch is seeing. This is the top events that's impacting this site. But not only that, give recommendations on how to resolve those issues. And again, bring this back to a NOC team. They've got X amount of sites. They've got X amount of technology domains. They've got X amount of things going on, generically speaking, on the network. So to have a conversational assistant like Marvis VNA, and just to ask a human-based question such as, how is client David Townsend? And then the Marvis VNA to go away and take that question and learn the data and come back with those proactive and meaningful results is very, very powerful, because that is thus going to give the lowest or the best mean time to innocence, as Mist calls it, i.e. the best time to find out what those network issues are that's impacting end users at a site, org, device, client level, whatever, and then give recommendations on how to resolve that. So that is Marvis VNA. You will see this in just a minute. There's also the Marvis, and this is a new feature, Marvis Minis. So this was announced by Juniper Networks earlier this year. What Marvis Minis is, and I do a lot of work in the retail, and the retail is particularly loving Marvis Minis, is because they have customers that are coming into store, into retail, into the shops during working hours. Now that's fine, but of course we all do that. But then when users go home and their staff go home, what's happening on the network? Now, if that retailer has Marvis, and all of this is included in Marvis, the Marvis Minis is there, and what it's doing is it's testing from a client's perspective, without any clients being connected to that Wi-Fi network. Is DHCP working for this particular SSID, for this VLAN? Is DNS responding? Is ARP responding? Can I get connectivity to these business critical applications? And the enterprise can even define their own business critical application. So Minis is just there testing before any users come back to site, guest or internal staff, doesn't matter. When users come back to site, will they have that Wi-Fi connectivity? If not, why not? And this then feeds up into the Marvis Actions. So if there is a problem on a particular SSID with DHCP, that's going to be picked up on the Marvis Actions via Marvis Minis. It's just there testing. So if you do a firmware upgrade, or if you deploy a new AP, or maybe you change the configuration, maybe deploy a new wireless LAN and an SSID, etc., etc. Marvis Minis is just there testing. Is your network there ready for when users connect to your network? So from a network perspective, you know about any impacts that will impact end users' experience and connectivity to the network and thus generating some kind of business model, it's there detecting those problems before even users come back onto site. How powerful is that? And then finally, there is this Marvis query language. Now, the query language, for me, the way I think of this is if there's any questions that you cannot ask in the Marvis VNA, you can ask in the Marvis query language. Such as, just for example, if you wanted to ask about the particular roaming of a Wi-Fi client, such as David Townsend, you could ask so in the query language, and then the Marvis query is going to go and look at David Townsend's roaming experience over the last day, 2 days, 7 days, whatever, and come back with those results and even track what was my roaming like. But you can also ask other query-based languages, such as the number of events that happened on a particular site, or the number of switching events that happened for a particular switch, etc., etc. It allows you to define really granular and particular queries on a client, switch, AP, event, site, and a lot more. So high level speaking, this is Marvis. And Marvis is supported for the wireless, so that is the Wi-Fi network. It's also supported for the wired, which is the Mist language for the switching network. And finally, it's supported on the WAN as well. And all of this, from the Marvis Actions to the Marvis VNA to the Marvis Minis to the Marvis Query, is just included in the Marvis license. So very straightforward in terms of licensing, but very powerful at the same time. Enough of me talking, let's now go on the UI, and you will see for yourself why I said at the beginning why this is powerful and why this is unique. And here is the user interface on the Mist solution. Now, the first thing I'm going to go through is the Marvis VNA, the virtual network assistant. But before I show you the VNA, let me show you and walk you through a typical investigation into a client and what's wrong with that, and then compare that to the value that the Marvis and the VNA then brings. So if you don't know the user interface, generally speaking, I'm looking at the service level expectations, or SLEs, for the wireless network, the Wi-Fi network, for this particular site over the last 7 days. If you don't know what wireless assurance is, please check out this link to this video I've done. It's described there in a lot more detail. The SOEs is not a topic for this video, but what you can see for the last 7 days for this site are the 7 SOEs, those expectations which have been defined, and we can generally, high level speak, and see that, yeah, this is an okay site. You know, the time to connect, most of the users are connecting within 91%. 91% of those users connecting are connecting within your expectation. Only 70% of users are actually connecting successfully. For the coverage, which looks at weak signal on the uplink and the downlink, and generally weak signal, this is at 90% of your expectation. 76% of users have been roaming within your expectation. Notice the theme here, and generally you get the idea. Is we're looking at the percentages and tracking, you know, are your expectations being met? But coming back to the successful connects, you could see only, as I said, only 70% of users are connecting successfully over the last 7 days. Now, if I click on successful connects, the AI within Mist then breaks this down. It breaks down what is that missing 30%. And that missing 30%, 23% of that missing 30% is due to authorization. The majority is actually due to DHCP at 76%. And then there's the sub-classifiers here, which breaks down that DHCP sequence. So very powerful, very granular, I know. But what I want to focus on is authorization. So if I just click on authorization, this means 23% of that missing 30% over the last 7 days the problem has been because users are just not authorizing correctly. They're doing the wrong password. There's something wrong. There's something that's impacting authorization. And affected items, and I know I'm going quick here, but again, the point is not to go through the SOEs. But under users here, you can see all the users that have failed to connect successfully, i.e. they've had authorization problems. And the user I want to focus on is client Denali. So if I click on client Denali, and you're going to get a summary here. Now this is actually AI just resolving real world networking problems in this case. We could see client Denali's insights again for the last 7 days. So this user's not having a great time because the third issue with this client Denali is that they've had a bad roaming experience 14% of the time due to poor signal quality. The second issue is that they were also having authorization problems 20% of the time. The number one issue with this particular client is that when they do connect successfully, it's taken them too long. 88% of the time it's taken them too long to connect to the network, and that's due to slow association. Now, going even further, you can click on View Insights just at the top here and then go into Client Level Insights. And if I scroll down, you can then see Authorization Failures, and I can click on the bad here. And you can see that this user's having a lot of authorization failures. But notice the paper attachment here, the paper clip. Obviously, that means there's an attachment. And Mist has automatically, dynamically captured those interest in those bad packets. And at that point, you could download it and inspect the PCAPs and engage with the end user to see what's happening with authorization. Or use Marvis VNA. So this little box down at the bottom here, this little pop-up, this is Marvis VNA. And I'm just going to maximize it. And it's here saying, hey, David, I'm Marvis. I'm your virtual network assistant. Ask me a question. So let's just ask, how is client Denali? I don't even have to spell it right. I could have done how is client Den. It just knows what client I'm talking about. And let me ask a more particular question. How is client Denali for the last 7 days? So the difference being is client Denali was just checking today. So there's been no particular issues. But over the last 7 days, these are the client impacting events. So authorization error. So if I click on here, this is then going to bring up more details into client Denali. So I just asked a simple question. Marvis, the VNA, went away, took my question, learned the AI insight, and has now come back with that meaningful data. So 21% of authorization failures for this particular wireless LAN. It's affecting a small number of clients within the 5 gigahertz band. They also experience poor roaming 14% of the time. But note here these different options, these different boxes which you can choose. So if I click on failure timeline, you could see in the background it's actually taken me to that failure timeline. If I click on client insights, it's taken me directly to the client insights, exactly where I've just come from. If I go into scope of impact, I can look at where are these failures being seen. So from a wireless LAN, they're being seen on the Mist IoT. I could see it from a particular AP. So a lot of failures on this particular access point. The thing I want to show is the recommendation. So if I select recommendation, it now gives me a recommendation to resolving this, i.e. verify the Wi-Fi's username, password and entered on the device. So this is the number one thing to check, i.e. this is user error. Maybe they've got their username wrong or their password has been entered incorrectly. How many times do we do that ourselves? So just think, that Knox team, how much time this has then saved them. They know to phone client Denali, say, we can see you're having authorization problems. Have you got your username correct? Have you got your password correct? If they're absolutely adamant that they have on both of those, then okay, let's make sure that their client's account isn't disabled on the Active Directory. And the third part is to ensure that their certificate hasn't expired. So those are the 3 steps. Number 1 being, actually, this is more than likely user error, but let's check with them. Just think about the time to resolve that particular case, how quick and easy that is. But it's not just a client you can ask for. You can also ask, just for example, how is my AP? How is my access point? I didn't actually define a particular access point. every AP, switch, WAN router, of course, they have different names or host names. So the VNA, Marvis, has just said, well, Dave, what AP are you actually talking about here? You need to give me a bit of a steering here. So let's just select this AP here, and you can see it's now going to troubleshoot this access point. And for this access point, again, I didn't define a time period. That's just a habit I have. It's just doing it for May the 30th. Between this particular time period, it's seen some sticky clients, it's seen some poor coverage, some AP disconnect issues as well. So let's go on to poor coverage, and you can now see that clients of this AP experience poor coverage 61% of the time. This is again within the 5 GHz band, and there's also limited RF capacity at 28% of the time as well. And again, click on recommendation, and it's going to give you recommendations on how to resolve those issues. This is extremely powerful. You can also ask, how is my switch? Well, actually, let's do something a little bit different. You could say, how is my site? So if you didn't want to focus on a particular client, maybe you wanted to focus on a particular site itself, it's going to say, well, what site are you actually talking about? Let me do live demo. And just for this particular site, so whether you've got 1 site, 10 sites, or 100 sites in your organization, just enter in the site name here, and it's going to say, well, here's what I found for this time period for this particular site. There's wireless issues. There's no issues on the WAN. That's good news. And there's some wired issues as well. So let's go on to the wired. And we can now see switches in this site experience authentication failures 35% of the time. And I can also then go into the failure timeline. Note it's changing in the background. And you can even ask, how is Microsoft Teams? I think this is how it's called. Let's do how is... here we go. So here's a list of top sites that are using Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to do live demo, and we can now see all the users, and this is with the Microsoft Teams integration on Mist as well. I'll do a video on that at a later point. But you can see all the users that are using Microsoft Teams, and a lot of organizations use MS Teams these days. So I'm going to click on Bob Friday. We can see all the times that they used, this particular user was using Microsoft Teams, and I'm just going to pick anyone, and it's now going to troubleshoot this application, and we get that client to cloud visibility. Now in this particular case, everything was good. Everything was passing the expectations. But what if there was an issue, an event on the wireless, wired or WAN? Well, you're not going to have a nice pretty green tick box here. You would actually have a red X, and you'd be able to select that, as I am now, and actually see, well, what was happening on the switch? What was happening on the AP? What was happening from that client to cloud connection that was impacting that end user's experience? And even if you just want to have a little bit of fun, you can even ask, tell me a joke, and it just comes back, rest in peace, boiling water, you will be missed. That's a new one, I've not heard that one before. But that little bit of fun there, I know, at the end. But that is Marvis VNA, a conversational assistant that is powered by AI. That is taking your question, and those are just a few of the questions that I typically ask, but that takes your question, pushes that question through all its mechanisms in VNA, there's obviously a lot, and comes back with AI-fed, proactive insights into what is that problem, how is that impacting the end user, and this is what you need to do to resolve it. That is a lot quicker than clicking here, clicking there, clicking here, clicking there, and actually getting into the root cause. Marvis VNA just drastically speeds up that investigation and significantly improves that mean time to instance. But that is Marvis VNA. What about the Marvis Actions? Well, here under Marvis is the Marvis Actions. Here is that single pane or pane glass of view, single pane glass of view. That's it. Yeah, single view basically into your entire organization. So if your organization has got a number of sites, you can look at this across the globe and see, yeah, these are all the actions that you've got to take across the site. So you can see here in this particular site, there's 34 actions. But I honestly like the org view. So it just breaks it down a lot more nicely, in my personal opinion. Again, I'm being unbiased here as possible. But for this whole organization, there's 90 actions that need to be taken to resolve a number of networking, experiencing, impacting events, such as at layer 1, there's one action, not one bad cable, but there's one action that needs to be taken to replace a bad cable that will be impacting to a degree end users connectivity and their experience. And if I just scroll down, we can see it's for this site, it's for this particular device connecting on this switch on this port. You can click on here and you can even go into the AP configuration itself. But really, you didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that. I could just see here, I need to replace this cable on this switch on this port facing this device. It's an AP, and that is just going to resolve a huge amount of impacting events, because how many clients are connecting wirelessly to this AP? I don't know. I could ask, but I'm not going to. But that is very, very powerful. You then have connectivity as well. So under DHCP failures, there's ARP DNS, but I just want to look at DHCP. We can see, well, what DHCP servers are failing, or where in the DHCP process is it failing. So we could see that this DHCP server is failing and it's impacting these clients, and these servers are just basically not responding. So if you have a DHCP server that isn't responding, maybe its pool is exhausted or maybe it's gone offline, Marvis Actions is there and able to detect, this DHCP server has gone offline. You need to check this. This is an action you need to do. And it's the same for authentication failures in DNS and ARP. The following sites have authentication failures. Check the reason details for each. And it's impacting all these particular clients. You can even go down. That's for the connectivity. But you can also see this at an AP, at a hardware level. So you can see here there's one action for an AP that has failed the health check. So obviously hardware, regardless of vendor, it starts to fail over time. Of course, we're human beings and our hardware starts to fail over time. It's just life. It's what happens. But we can see this AP is actually needing to be replaced because it's starting to fail that health check. So proactive networking insights, and just think about this is going to stop so many clients complaining that they don't have Wi-Fi connectivity, because at some point this AP is going to go offline by the looks of it. But this Marvis Actions is there and telling you this is going to go, but you need to replace this AP. It's giving you that forward thinking, that alerting of you need to take this action. But also there's 5 actions for APs being offline. And note, Marvis is able to differentiate between a switch being down, between an AP or 2 APs having no IP address, and they're just locally offline. And that's because the Mist APs, the access points, they talk to each other and they learn, you've not got an IP address. You've not got DNS being resolved. Your switch port is down. You're just actually turned off. How powerful is that? So if it's not an IP address, maybe that's due to the DHCP servers being exhausted, but it's all picked up here. And what I really love, being a switching and routing man, I've been biased, I know now, is this, missing VLANs. And I'm going to get a little bit techie. I know from my testing and measurement days that a VLAN header, a VLAN tag is 4 bytes of overhead on the Ethernet frame per tag. And within those 4 bytes, you have 2 bytes which go towards something called a TPID, or Tag Protocol Identifier, i.e. is it a CS or EVLAN. You have 3 bits which go to a priority field, 1 bit which will either be a CFI or a DEI, depending on the type of tag. I know, complete there. But the point here is that you have 12 bits that go to a VLAN identifier. Now 12 bits, a bit is either a 0 or 1, 0 or 1. So you've got 2 options. And if you do 2 to the power of 12, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 12 times, the value you come out with is 4096. So that means every VLAN could have only 1, but it has an option to go up to 4096. What happens if that VLAN ID That tag is not configured on an interface, on a sub interface, on a trunk, on an access interface. What happens is, worst case scenario, that traffic is black hole. It's not going anywhere. That AP, that switch has got no other choice but just to drop that traffic. It's got nowhere to go. Now, if you want to quarantine that traffic, that's great. But probably you don't want that to actually happen. But using Marvis Actions, using AI, it's taken all of that complexity away, and it's just told me, it's telling you, this AP, these APs are missing VLANs. Click view more, boom, done. This switch, on this port are missing these VLANs. How powerful is that? Just think about the amount of time that would have taken for a network engineer or a NOC team, etc., to investigate that. I mean, there's no comparison. There's really no comparison. But then you've got negotiation mismatch, which is due to auto negotiation, basically not agreeing on both sides of the ports on the interface what their speed, duplex, etc. should be. Or maybe a loop's been detected, so that's referring to spanning tree protocol. Maybe there's a physical loop on an interface somewhere. Maybe a port is going up and down, port up and down. Maybe there's high CPU, you need to look into that. Or maybe a port is stuck and you've got these other two, which is grayed out because there's no actions there. That's for the switching. So we've got layer one, we've got connectivity to the APs, the switching, the WAN edge. And under WAN edge, you've got bad WAN uplinks. So that's the uplink out of your enterprise network, and as well as VPN paths being down, the actions that you need to take for these. And note, nothing for security, but there's 57 actions to take for that data center. If you've got a data center, of course. That is a single pane of glass view into all those organization events, which could be hundreds or thousands. Doesn't matter. If you take these 90 actions, that is going to resolve all of those events, all of those problems that are impacting or will impact end users' experience. Marvis Actions. And then there is this Marvis Minis. This is the newest feature, and this is being enhanced. I can say that because there was recently Mobility Field Day. Right now, this is for wireless only, the Wi-Fi, but it's been extended to cover switching as well, and it's going to be a microservice on the cloud, and there's going to be a lot more insight into what you're seeing here. Exciting times ahead. But Marvis Minis, as I said, it's there testing right now that Wi-Fi network, and you can see all the sites it's been testing for these APs. The tests that were run did any feeding to Marvis Actions, and you can actually see for these sites which ones have failed. But of course we could go into more detail. Click on Site Live Demo, and you can see one's in progress right now. And I know it's weird. We don't really care about the tests that passed and successfully. We care about the ones that failed. A bit backwards, I know, but that's just networking for you. But we could see here this test, which ran only for 12 seconds, it failed. Now, if I click on here, you can then see all the switches and the APs connected. So this AP is connected to this switch. This AP is connected to this switch. And Marvis Minis has tested these VLANs, which will be associated to a particular SSID, to a particular wireless LAN. And you've got the gig interfaces and descriptions, etc. But all the way down here, obviously green means it's passed, but right here is DHCP. So for this particular AP connecting to this switch, it failed on DHCP. Why did it then? Why are you seeing all these other APs being tested? Well, what Marvis Minis does is it uses AI, and it has this theory of a scope. So if, and as it did, it failed on this particular SSID for, well, whatever the SSID is, this AP for this SSID associated to VLAN 2, it failed on DHCP. So what then Marvis Minis is going to do is it's going to increase its scope of test to test the other APs connected in that site in this case, but on a non-live demo, this would be APs connected to the same switch. Do you have DHCP connectivity? And if another AP doesn't have DHCP connectivity, it will increase its scope again. And it will keep doing that until it starts to learn very quickly, this is not an AP specific configuration. All all APs for this particular wireless LAN don't have DHCP. This is something on the switching side. And then Marvis Minis is soon going to have that feature to test on the switching capability as well. Very powerful. But here you can actually download that packet capture. Note here the pop-up, I've now downloaded that packet capture. But generally speaking, you don't have to, unless you want to get that packet capture, you don't have to go into this because it's just there. It's there running and it feeds into Marvis Actions. So for DHCP, that would be under connectivity. So here is where Marvis Minis fed into Marvis Actions. And how do you enable Marvis Actions? Well, Marvis Actions, Marvis Minis, apologies. Well, just under organization settings, right at the bottom, currently it's just enabled, but here you can actually define your own custom URLs, your own custom application. Do you want to exclude any VLANs? But generally, it's just there. And when I say it's just there, you don't have to do any configuration. There's no hardware that's actually required. Marvis Minis is just included in Marvis as a feature, as a license, and it will just get up and running and start testing your wireless and soon your wired network to test for any connectivity problems without any users actually being connected. And the final thing I want to show is the Marvis query language. Where is this actually found? Because under Marvis, all you can see is Marvis Minis and Marvis Actions. Well, it's a bit subtly hidden, but under Marvis Actions, here you've got ask a question. This is the Marvis query language here. So all you need to do is click and hit space and return when you're happy with the results. But here, and going back to my example, you could do rank. Let's see the roaming of, and I am a Star Wars fan. You could probably notice from the Star Wars helmets behind me. But here's R2D2, and I want to see the roaming of this particular client over the last 7 days. Hit enter, and R2D2 needs some WD-40 in his wheels because he's not going very far. But we can actually see this client roamed from this AP to this AP. It was a good roam, it was a bad roam. On a floor plan, how was that roaming? But on a table view, we can see the RSSI, the channel they roam to and from, the band, the wireless LAN. Obviously, this isn't a very interesting client, but you get the idea. Is it's allowing you to ask a very specific question. And let's make it a bit more interesting. So now I want to list the number of client events with that particular band of 5 gigahertz. And for this particular wireless LAN, well, I'm going to do access points. So I'm going to do this AP here. Hit space during the last 7 days. Honestly, I don't know if there's going to be any results to this. We will see. But there we go. Here is the list of all client events that happened for this 5 gigahertz band for this particular AP over the last 7 days. And you can see there's a lot. There's 14,420 from clients deauthentication, authorization and association. Yeah, it looks like it's all those. But you get the idea. You can even ask, I want to troubleshoot a client. So let's go back to client Denali during last 7 days. And we can see time to connect, successful connects and roaming issues. But I identified that within Marvis VNA anyway. So there we go, everybody. That is the end of this video. That is the end of this part where I've gone through high level, a quick introduction and review into what Marvis is on Juniper Networks Mist solution. And I do hope that you can see and maybe agree with me as to why it is so powerful and 100% why it is unique. I guarantee you will not find anything like Marvis, and I'm being completely unbiased here, but you will not find anything like Marvis on any other vendor. Cisco, HPE, Aruba, Fortinet, I would put money down confidently there's nothing like this out there. But any questions or comments, please let me know down in the comments box. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Best way to support my channel. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'm going to get back to my popcorn.